in here. Which missing a few. Good morning. Let's see. Missing a few. I know Sterling is not going to be here today. Oh, Christian's got a birthday in a week. We'll have to remember that. All right, Ian is here in person. Corey, Christian, no Brendan, no Hayward. Troy is here in person. Eli. Nate is here in person. No Chip, which is surprising. He's almost always here. Sterling, I will mark Sterling present anyway. And on Darius. Give everybody like another minute or so, see if we get anybody else before I submit attendance. Hope everyone had a nice weekend. Hi, Miss Blackmore. What's this? Okie doke. We'll go ahead and submit attendance. And see if anyone else shows up. Let me get plugged in over here and we will get started. Come on. Wish I could just AirPlay, but like, I'm gonna give it a shot, or I'm gonna try to give it a shot. Maybe I don't know how to do it. Maybe I don't know how to do it. All right, let's do it this way. Oh. Okie doke. So the first thing we're gonna do is the other day when on Friday, was it Friday? No, Thursday. We watched a few videos about different sources that are referenced in Frankenstein. We watched something about Prometheus. We watched something about Paradise Lost. And what was the third one? I don't know why that's not coming to mind, but it's not. We watched 3 though. It was, shoot, where you could, it's escaping me. But we didn't get to finish the Paradise Lost one. And I was thinking that was kind of okay because I didn't really like the video anyway. But I found another video about Paradise Lost that we're going to watch. And the upside is that it directly talks about how it relates to Frankenstein. The downside is that there's like a little bit of a spoiler. I mean, you guys are supposed to finish chapter 10 by tomorrow, and we'll start reading chapter 11 together. It mentions some lines from chapter 11, but it's nothing that's like, it's not going to spoil the end of the book or anything. So we should be good. And then after we watch this, we're going to go back over a little bit of stuff in chapter 10, and then I'll tell you what you're doing. But let me go ahead and share my screen here. And you guys can already see this. save this. So it starts out by talking about Frankenstein and then goes into how it's related to Paradise Lost. This is a good video.
Paradise Lost excited different and far deeper emotions. I read it as I had read the other volumes which had fallen into my hands, as a true history. It moved every feeling of wonder and awe that the picture of an omnipotent God warring with his creatures was capable of exciting. I often referred the several situations, as their similarity struck me, to my own. Like Adam, I was apparently united by no link to any other being in existence, but his state was far different from mine in every other respect. He had come forth from the hands of God, a perfect creature, happy and prosperous, guarded by the especial care of his creator. He was allowed to converse with and acquire knowledge from beings of a superior nature, but I was wretched, helpless, and alone. Many times I considered Satan as the fitter emblem of my condition, for often, like him, when I viewed the bliss of my protectors, the bitter gall of envy rose within me. This episode is brought to you by The Great Courses Plus. Go to thegreatcoursesplus.com/extra credits to start your 1-month free trial. To fully understand what Shelley is trying to tell us about the monster in Frankenstein by associating him with Satan in Paradise Lost, there's something you have to know about Milton's great work. You see, many have argued that Satan is actually the protagonist in Paradise Lost, even though Milton would not explicitly come out and say it. One of the great espousers of this theory was proto-romantic William Blake, and this idea was all the rage amongst the Romantics. Shelley would have almost certainly thought of the character of Satan in these terms. You see, in Paradise Lost, it's easy to see Satan's character as the great advocate of freedom, the rebellious symbol of liberty. It's from him that we get that immortal line, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. I mean, swap in some different proper nouns, that line could come from any number of hero characters resisting oppression, because to him, being free of all yokes is worth any price. In the book, Satan is zealous, courageous, bold, loyal to those who have been loyal to him, but most of all, no matter what the cost, he is single-mindedly opposed to surrendering to the will of heaven, to unquestioningly obeying orders given to him. By associating the monster with Satan, what Shelley is hinting to her reader is that, much like the devil in Paradise Lost, the protagonist in her book may not be who you expect. It may not be the human fashioned in divine image, but rather the creature whose physical form, we are told, is a mockery of such. And it's from Milton's portrayal of Satan that I believe Shelley drew the inspiration for some of the monster's most notable features, principally among them his power of speech. Like Satan, the monster in Frankenstein is more articulate and more eloquent than any other character in the story. For both characters, their outer appearance belies their inner thoughtfulness and their ability to express grand ideas. Frankenstein's monster is a grotesque creature cobbled together from the corpses of the dead, and Satan was made hideous by being cast into hell before Paradise Lost even begins. And yet, in each case, the wars they fight are already lost. In each case, they are fighting a war that they have no chance to overcome. One of them fights God, the other one fights human nature. And yet, as you read, these characters manage to convince you that there might yet be hope for their cause, that there might be some way yet unseen to find success, even though, by the very nature of the works they exist in, we know these characters have lost long before their battles even begin. And through those lost causes and their eloquence, both characters seduce the reader into overlooking the evil in their nature. For they do both share that same consuming flaw, the desire for vengeance. When Satan realizes that he's lost his war with heaven, he says, "What though the field be lost? All is not lost. The unconquerable will and study of revenge, immortal hate and courage never to submit or yield, and what is else not to be overcome?" And Shelley plays with the monster's knowledge of Paradise Lost, making the monster see just how similar he is to Milton's Satan, having the monster describe his own killing frenzy by saying, "Evil thenceforth became my good." Nearly a direct quote of Satan's words, "All good to me is lost. Evil be thou my good." In that moment, Shelley is trying to make us realize that these are not heroes to emulate, but rather heroes to pity, Her book is not an adventure or even a horror story. It's a tragedy of human weakness, of lofty moral hopes dashed upon petty and sordid ground. And just like the juxtapositions in Plutarch, the parallel between Satan and the monster forces us to consider another juxtaposition. For if the monster so clearly mirrors Milton's Satan, then is Victor Frankenstein supposed to mirror Milton's God? Because he doesn't. And that comparison serves to make us realize just how weak and unfit a creator Frankenstein is. He is not omnipotent. In fact, a mere fright leaves him laid up in bed for months. And whenever his emotions overwhelm him, he's consumed by delirium and fever. He doesn't even comprehend the responsibilities of fatherhood or creation. He abandons the life he brought into being the instant he sees how ugly it is. And in that too, we see how unlike Milton's God Victor is. For Milton's God creates creatures in his own image, whereas Frankenstein, in his haste to see his hopes fulfilled, creates a creature that is a mockery of his image. But these characters are similar in one way. Neither Milton's God nor Shelley's Victor Frankenstein are self-critical enough to see that they are hurting the very beings who they're supposed to be responsible for. Both of these books are infused with the same sense that these creators could have easily averted this tragedy that unfolds had their characters been just slightly different. And in both of these works, the created perpetuate that tragedy. This is what makes the tragedy of Frankenstein so effective. From the outside, as readers, as observers, we can see how easily these tragedies might have been avoided. And yet, we can also see how completely impossible avoiding them actually is. The book asks us to look at our own lives through this lens. Where have we let our natures lead us to tragedies that might have easily been avoided, that we could have prevented if we were aware and willing enough to take a step back and, for just a moment, act beyond our nature? Lastly, though, there is one more tragedy embedded in the monster's association with Satan, and that is that he himself knows which character he's like. He knows who he is, but he wants to be more. It's clear that he wants to be Adam, with a loving creator who builds for him a paradise and helps guide him through life. And we're forced to think, at least in part, that it's out of this yearning, this desire to be Adam, that the monster emulates Adam and demands a mate. The action that ultimately brings everybody to ruin. Because the monster is not Adam, and Victor isn't God. And so all of this knowledge, everything the monster learns about humanity as an outsider peering in, leads him to say one telling line. He says, "Increase in knowledge only discovered to me more clearly what a wretched outcast I was." That is the true tragedy of Frankenstein. The monster has all of the building blocks of a great individual, and yet he is very literally built in such a way that the world won't let him be.
All right, the end. I really love that video. Sorry, I'm trying to like pull this over here. I really love that video because it kind of makes the parallels for us. This whole thing with Paradise Lost it's the story of Satan being thrown out of heaven. Someone, this angel that God created. And I think it's pretty easy to see that parallel there because Victor obviously created the creature, and the creature has done a lot of terrible things, but who's to blame for all of that? That's the big question. Like, is it his fault that he's such a monster? Like, certainly he makes some bad choices, but he was never really taught to do anything different. And when you're cast out by your creator, you're definitely going to like wind up getting some kind of sort of complex to make you feel like you're not worthy. And I do think that line that he said at the very end is really so sad. And we'll get more into that later on this week when we start hearing the monster story. But he said, like, the more knowledge I had, all that really did for me was show me what a monster I am. So like, I'd rather have been ignorant. It's very sad. Before I continue, let me go fix attendance for those of you who got here a little later before I forget. Brendan and Chip. Okay, so y'all should read through chapter 10 tomorrow. We'll start reading chapter 11. But I want to talk a little bit about chapter 10 anyway, because your assignment for today has something to do with it. My goodness. So chapters 6 through 10, only a few things happen, but it's like a big event. In fact, I think chapter 9 is sort of like the biggest waste of paper, because it's just him like wandering around, be like lamenting. I'm just like, I don't know if we needed that. Yes, let me write you a pass. You sound like a balloon with the air being let out. This guy thinks that 2 wands are better. Troy Green.
Care Bear?
What?
Care Bear raccoon?
Yeah, it's a Care Bear cousin. That's Brightheart Raccoon. Let's get to know the Care Bear cousins. There's also Cozy Heart Penguin, Gentle Heart Lamb, Crazy Heart Monkey. I used to have a cassette tape and a book about them. Okay, so where we left off reading last time was Elizabeth's letter about how she was so upset that she hadn't heard from him, and she was like kind of catching him up on everything, and about Justine. And in these chapters, we kind of realize how important Justine is, because then Victor gets another letter from his dad that says, oh no, worst news ever, your brother William has been murdered. And William's like a young child, so that is very I mean, it's upsetting whenever anybody's murdered, but you know, for a little child, he didn't do anything wrong, so how could he have had an enemy or anything? And they're going, at first he's just missing, and they go out and search for him, and they find his body, and his body has like marks around the neck where he's been strangled. But Justine, the servant, was out looking for him, and she was found with this locket on her with a picture of Victor and William's mom, and the last person who had it was the kid, William. So they were like, oh, she took that off of him and then she killed him. And they accused Justine of it. And she's like, no. I loved this kid like he was my own family. I would never have murdered him. Like, I'm as brokenhearted about this as anybody is. And just like happens today, like from making a murderer, they're like, hey, if you confess, we'll go easy on you. And she's like, well, okay then. And she does. She confesses to this murder, which she didn't do, and they hang her. And the whole time, Victor's like, I don't really believe that Justine would have done this. I don't think that she would have killed him. And also, like, she's like a little petite woman. I don't know if if she would make that kind of mark around him if she strangled him, let alone like what motive would she even have to do that. And like as he is leaving, he sees the monster out in the distance, and he's like, oh no, the monster's the one who actually killed him. And he does kind of put that together on his own and like doesn't have it confirmed at first, but he's the only one who knows about the monster. He hasn't told anyone that he created this being. So he feels like he can't tell anybody about it. And like, I see the point there, but also it's annoying because he's right. Like, if you ever heard somebody say, I created a person who is living from pieces of dead bodies, you'd be like, well, lock this guy up. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a crazy person. And Victor knows that that would be kind of the response that he gets. So he doesn't want to say anything. So he's kind of, in addition to the burden that he has of having created this monster, now he's also got this burden of being the only person who knows who really killed William. And if you haven't read chapter 10 yet, I'm going to go ahead and like spoil some of it for you, because I'm going to read a little bit of it, a particular passage or two. But he's like out kind of wandering in chapter 9 and chapter 10. Victor does a lot of just like wandering around, like moping, lamenting his misfortune. chapter 9 is like all of that and it's boring. But in chapter 10, he's doing that. And then suddenly the monster comes out of nowhere and is like, hey, I need to talk to you, which he had no idea the monster could even talk. And then it turns out the monster is like more articulate than he even is, which I think is another sort of parallel with that and Paradise Lost, because Satan in Paradise Lost, who is kind of the protagonist, does have like, he's like in danger of having more knowledge than the God character, and that's one of the reasons that he feels like he needs to be stopped. And so it's a similar thing here. Like the monster appears to be even more articulate, more educated maybe than Victor, and he has no idea how he has come to have all this knowledge, because last time he saw him, he was just like stumbling around, blinking at him, grimacing at him, maybe a smile, but he was like an 8 foot tall baby. He didn't know anything. So chapter 10 is really interesting. I'm just gonna read like from where the monster comes in, and then I'm gonna skip around a little bit. But the monster is clearly trying to like draw Victor out. He wants to talk to him. He wants something. So we kind of find out somewhat what that is right now. He says, as I said this, I suddenly beheld the figure of a man at some distance advancing towards me with superhuman speed. He bounded over the crevices in the ice, among which I had walked with caution. His stature also as he approached seemed to exceed that of man. I was troubled, a mist came over my eyes, and I felt a faintness seize me, of course. But I was restored by the cold gale of the mountains. He realizes it's the monster. He's like scared to death. Rage and hatred had at first deprived me of utterance. He couldn't speak. He was so upset to see this monster. And then, devil, I exclaimed, do you dare approach me, and do you not fear the fierce vengeance of my arm wreaked on your miserable head? Begone, vile insect, or rather stay, that I may trample you to dust. And oh, that I could, with the extinction of your miserable existence, restore those victims whom you have so diabolically murdered. And he kind of holds him responsible for Justine's death as well, which I think is fair. But I think Victor is talking a big game right here. He's like, how dare you approach me? I'm going to beat you to death. And like, okay, I understand the sentiment there, but he's 8 feet tall. He's moving with superhuman speed. I don't think Victor, this like normal sized intellectual, is going to have much of a chance there. So this is the first thing the monster says. I expected this reception, said the demon. And in the book, when you see it, it's spelled like Damon, but it just means demon. It's just an old spelling. All men hate the wretched. How then must I be hated, who am miserable beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me, thy creature, to whom thou art bound by ties only dissoluble by the annihilation of one of us. You purpose to kill me. How dare you sport thus with life? Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you and the rest of mankind. If you will comply with my conditions, I will leave them and you at peace. But if you refuse, I will glut the maw of death until it be satiated with the blood of your remaining friends. So he doesn't say exactly like what he wants from Victor, but he says like, you've got a duty towards me, and if you do that duty, then we'll be cool. But if you don't, I'm gonna kill you and everyone you know. So like if I were Victor, I'd listen to him. I'd be like, all right, what does this guy need from me? But Victor kind of yells at him, abhorred monster, fiend that thou art, the tortures of hell are too mild a vengeance for thy crimes, wretched devil, blah, blah. He tries to punch him or something, and the monster easily gets away from him, because of course he does. And then the monster says, be calm. I entreat you to hear me before you give vent to your hatred on my devoted head. Have I not suffered enough that you seek to increase my misery? Life, although it may only be an accumulation of anguish, is dear to me, and I will defend it. Remember, thou hast made me more powerful than thyself. My height is superior to thine, my joints more supple, but I will not be tempted to set myself in opposition to thee. I am thy creature, and I will be even mild and docile to my natural lord and king, if thou wilt also perform thy part, the which thou owest me. O Frankenstein, be not equitable to every other, and trample upon me alone, to whom thy justice and even thy clemency and affection is most due. Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss from which I alone am irrevocably excluded. I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. So this is really interesting for several reasons. First of all, this is the maybe the first time, maybe not, that we actually hear a distinct comparison to Paradise Lost. He says, I should be thy Adam, instead I am the fallen angel. How does he even know who Adam is? Like, has he read the Bible? Has he read Paradise Lost? Can he even read? And we don't have those answers yet. We will get those answers. But like the way he talks is even more like elevated than the way Victor talks, which is saying something. And again, is why I want to why I want to adapt this into more modern English. But he says an interesting thing when he says, I was benevolent and good, misery made me a fiend. Like he's saying, I was born good, like babies are. And then the things that happened to me, the horrible misfortunes I've had, are what turned me into the fiend, the devil that I am. So it kind of gets us sort of primed to hear his story. Like, what happened to him? What did make him into this monster? And we just don't know yet. But again, he says, make me happy and I shall again be virtuous. Do what I'm going to ask of you and I'll be good again. And Victor's like, no. Like, I'm not going to do anything. I won't do anything for you. And he really like talks to him and like tries to reason with him. He says that you, my creator, abhor me. What hope can I gather from your fellow creatures who owe me nothing? If anyone owes me anything, it's you. And if you're not willing to cooperate with me, how can I expect anything from anyone else? Which is kind of a fair question. Like, not everybody's got good parents, and that's understandable. But using a generalization here, parents are the ones that you feel like will be there for you. Like they're supposed to be. That's their job. And essentially, Victor is the monster's parent. So he's like, why can't, like, if I can't depend on you, I can't depend on anybody. And you have made it very clear that I cannot depend on you. So, you know, Victor's just not cooperating. And the last thing the monster says is, basically like, listen to me and grant me compassion. Hear my tale. It is long and strange, and the temperature of this place is not fitting to your fine sensations. Come to the hut upon the mountain, blah, 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 blah. On you it rests, whether I quit forever the neighborhood of man and lead a harmless life, or become the scourge of your fellow creatures and the author of your own speedy ruin. So what he wants, the first thing he wants, is for him to listen to his story, which is what the next few chapters are going to be. He wants him to listen to the story of how he came to be here, like how he even knew who Victor was. Like, he's found him, and we're not even sure that he knew his name. So he's clearly like gone to some lengths to find Victor, find out who he is, obviously find his family. And like he admits that he murdered the kid, but he's like, well, it's kind of your fault, isn't it? You're the one who made me this way. So he wants Victor to follow him into this hut and hear his story, which this is going to be like the frame within the frame within the frame. And at the end of it, like once he has heard his story, he basically says, I'm going to ask something of you. And if you give me what I want, then we'll be good. And I will, I think he said, quit forever the neighborhood of man. I'll go off where no one will ever find me. I won't bother anyone anymore if you give me what I want. If you don't give me what I want, I'm going to murder you and everybody you know. And I'm going to make your life miserable. So obviously Victor's going to need to listen to this story if he wants to. He's still got a lot of people in his life. He's got his father. He's got another brother. He's got Elizabeth. He's got Henry. He's got his professors. He's got a lot of people in his life who he would want to protect for sure. So here's our assignment for today. and it is already published on Canvas. It's just a little quick write, and it doesn't have necessarily like a certain number of words you have to hit or anything like that, just in a few sentences. And I'm going to share my screen so we can all see it together. In a few sentences, answer the following prompt. In chapter 10, the monster says to Victor, and this is a thing that I just read to you guys from a couple of different passages, remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss from which I alone am irrevocably excluded. I can never be happy. I was benevolent and good, misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. On you it rests, whether I quit forever the neighborhood of man and lead a harmless life, or become the scourge of your fellow creatures and the author of your own speedy ruin. Will destroy your life. The question here is, what do you anticipate the creature wants from Victor in order to make him happy? We know the first thing he wants is for him to listen to his story, but he says, I'm going to ask you for something at the end of it. A little hint here is if you're really paying attention at the end of the video, you might be able to sort of predict it. What do you think he's going to ask of Victor? Furthermore, what was his purpose in murdering William? Do you think that Victor will comply with his wishes, whatever they may be? So there's kind of 3 questions there. Kind of 4, but the first 2 are asking the same thing. Like, what do you think the creature is going to ask of Victor? What does he want? What was his purpose in murdering William? And do you think Victor is going to do what the monster asks of him? So those are your 3 questions. Like I said, not a particular word count you have to hit or anything, just in a few sentences there. So I thought I was just going to give y'all like a certain amount of time, like 10 minutes or something to do this, and then we would move on. But we already have less than 20 minutes left. So I think I'm just going to give you the rest of the class period to do this. Sound good?
Miss McClellan.
Yes.
So did I somehow miss the due date for that notes assignment?
No.
No.
I'm glad you brought it up. The due date is Wednesday, and Wednesday will also be like, if you're not staying for a success session, Wednesday will be just time to finish that.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and stop my video. I would recommend that you stay until you finish, just because it seems to hold people more accountable. But also you can leave and work on it independently if you like. But just let me know if you need me, and I'll let you know when the class period is over.